Thank you all for joining me today. I'm going to be doing a talk on coding your career. So with that, I'll probably get started by telling a little bit about myself. I'm Garima Singh. I'm mom to two beautiful, lovely daughters, an 8-year-old and an 11-month-old. In my free time, I love reading books, playing chess, and very recently have picked up a knack for baking. Right? You can follow me on my Instagram channel, and we can connect offline for this if you're a baking nerd, but probably offline. Professionally, I'm an engineering manager at Bunnings, which means I look after the Bunnings website, both the trade and the retail one. And I look after the engineering direction and the vision for the website and the people that I work with. Now, trying to keep my career journey pretty brief, because there'll be a lot of points we'll be touching upon it as we go through the talk. I started my career with SlideShare back in India, worked with them for a year, then moved on to ThoughtWorks. Extremely lucky to get a chance to travel a lot when I worked at ThoughtWorks. I worked at various of their locations in India. Then I moved to UK, stayed there for a bit, moved to Singapore, and then I changed to JP Chase in Singapore. Worked with them for 3 years before moving to Australia 4 years back, and then joined ThoughtWorks again. And then after that, I joined Bunnings. I've been with Bunnings 3 happy years. So that's a very, very brief kind of walkthrough of the career journey, but we'll be touching upon it with examples and some kind of references as we go through it. Now, often when I look back at my career, and in fact, in early days, I used to say I'm extremely lucky to have worked with extraordinary people. I feel extremely lucky to have come across organizations that gave me the best opportunity possible. They plugged me to the projects that really allowed me to explore my capabilities, expand myself, and grow, and connect me to a network which is still to date my trustees and board of advisors really guiding me in the right direction. But as years progressed, I started understanding there's a bit more to luck that plays into your career. You have unconscious frameworks and tools that work in the back to allow you to take the right directions. So when I moved from that mentee role to a more of a mentor role, I realized I'm getting asked the same question that I used to ask a couple of years back. So I looked back at my journey, and I started kind of extracting out these tools and frameworks, which I want to kind of present today and really take you through some of these that probably might still be playing unconsciously for yourself at the back of your mind, but you're not really aware of them, and have a talk about how can you truly use them to make data-driven, fact-driven, educated decisions and conversations as you move ahead in your career, and what growth truly means. With that, I will introduce you to the agenda, which will be here. OK. So what we'll do is we'll start exploring the archetypes that exist in our industry, which we often relate or resonate with. Then we'll take a moment and step back and see what do we truly resonate with. Once we've figured out what these archetypes are and where we kind of find ourselves playing, we will then go and try to answer some common questions that we pose at various stages of our career, which I've kind of collaborated together in navigating your career. And then we will walk through some of that tool set that will really enable us to have those conversations. So the archetypes. Individual contributor. The most common one that you hear. People like to be hands-on. These are ones who want to get things done. They get satisfaction of moving and delivering stories and Jira tasks. They pride themselves being hands-on keyboard. So individual contributors. Extremely good to have a strong individual contributors on your team to get the work done. Then you have the tech leaders. Tech leaders are the one who I like to call enablers. They kind of give that vision and direction to your team. They're great at facilitation. They're great at conducting dev hurdles, talking about the bigger vision, talking about architectures, how systems should come together. And then we have the visionaries. Now, very recently, you would have started seeing a role appear in the industry, the principal engineer. right? So within your organization, you have some extraordinary individuals who can kind of put themselves back, look at the bigger picture, extract standards, practices, even lightweight governance models that can then enable just more than a team, like the whole of organizations. And some of them actually go further back and are able to implement these patterns and standards or probably governance models, sensible defaults across the industry. They're probably tech bloggers, they are probably your authors. We met Julia Larman this morning. So they are what I would call the visionaries, people who can then see this bigger picture, extract these patterns and standards out, and present to you in a cohesive way that you can then kind of figure out how it works for yourself or your organization. So with these three archetypes, I like to ask you all a question. Which archetype do you resonate with? Which of these roles do you believe you resonate with? And when you take a second to think about it, and as I look at this room, often a lot of you would be able to resonate with that individual contributor archetype. And then we'll have a medium circle which kind of resonates with that tech lead or tech leader kind of archetype. And then we'll have a smaller circle, one which resonates with the visionaries. And I can see Julia sitting in the crowd, but basically those who've written books and are ahead and publishing content and talking about these patterns across the industry. But is that really true? Do you really resonate with that just one archetype? And I would like to kind of bring you to this. It's not black and white. Based on the role that you have at a particular time, based on the hat you're wearing at a particular time, based on the responsibility you have to carry, these hats and archetypes kind of oscillate. It's almost like a Venn diagram. You can absolutely associate yourself with an individual contributor, but let's say if you're a senior individual contributor in your team and your tech lead or leaders have to go on leave, you would automatically step into that role for your team, and you would start helping them out, kind of helping kind of come to decisions and options, right? You're already probably contributing to some of that actively. Now, probably if I take my own example, I associate with the tech lead circle here. But today when I stand here and I'm trying to extract these tool sets, maybe I can pride myself saying there's a little bit of visionary in me, right? And then often we get in P1 or P2 incidents, and we are individual contributors trying to quickly figure out what the problem is, solve it, and then move on to a RCA at the end of it. So the thing I want to kind of leave you at the end of this slide, and which will be really important for us to have the conversations beyond this, is it's not black and white. You would resonate with one, but you would often oscillate in another. Actually, I have another example to add before I move on. We have this concept of feature leads, something that we've had in ThoughtWorks and now in Bunnings as well. Often individual contributors in our team who've really enjoyed their time, want to experiment and kind of extend their boundaries and see what works and doesn't work for them. There's a feature lead role where they can step up and say, I want to lead a feature, something that's limited by time and scope, and they try playing kind of a mini tech lead role for that feature. They still work with the rest of the team. They still take everybody inputs in, but they get to play that hat and see whether it's something that they like to do and they would like to do more in the future. So this role, even though the person who's playing this role typically associates and identifies themselves with an individual contributor archetype, probably is oscillating into that tech lead role for a period. Now that we've kind of looked at these archetypes, the next thing I want to kind of take you to is a question that is often asked in various different formats. How do I remain hands-on, right? Somebody who's just starting their career says, how do I remain relevant? How do I get more knowledge? As you've progressed in your career, and when you're in this place where you're kind of having to play a bit of leadership role and help enable your colleagues, you're saying, how do I stay relevant? How do I stay hands-on? And there are various different variants of this question. When I had my first daughter, I was actually struggling to come back to work, and I was questioning, will I be relevant? I asked a question, should I change role? I might struggle being hands-on, right? Similarly, people might be in different kind of stages of their life, and they might be asking this question just from a different angle. But the question has a common word, hands-on, relevant. Why is that so, right? And in more recent time, when somebody asks me this question for themselves, I ask them a question back. What does hands-on mean to you? Often, the common answer that you get, and again, a couple of variants, coding, programming, being on the keyboard. And that's excellent. I'm not a fan of ivory tower architects. That's excellent. But then I ask a follow-up question. If you look back at that last week or sprint or month, what were the things you really enjoyed in your team? What were the things you really enjoyed working towards and looked forward to on the next day? And then the answer changes. Based on that, I've tried compiling a set of concurrent circles that try to explain the satisfaction factor, which gives a bit more depth to hands-on. When you start your career and you're in that initial stages, you really love getting things done. You just want to pick up, you want to come to the next day to the office, look at a nice Jira story or task and say, I want to get it done. You'll go probably talk to a senior engineer in your team or a tech lead and say, hey, just help me, what's the vision here, how to get it done? You get hands-on and you get it delivered. You're in your solution space, you love getting solutions out, you love getting things delivered. And at this stage, as I said, in the yellow circle, you love getting things done. So hands-on truly means hands-on code. That's the satisfaction. It's allowing you to grow. It's giving you the sense of growth, and that's what you relate with. A couple of years down the lane, you figured out how to get things done, right? Now you're starting to connect with more people. You're coming to conferences and meetups like the one today. You're probably active in communities of practice in your team, guilds, chapters, different names and different companies, working groups. And you're figuring out how to get things done better. So you kind of moved from that stage of just getting things done, and you're investing in what does better look like? What does more efficient code look like? How do I write code which looks beautiful, which looks gorgeous, which I can come back and read, or somebody else can read and say, I absolutely understand what this is. You're talking about TDD, you're talking about BDD, you're talking about these practices which allow you to see and live that beautiful code. So it's giving you a sense of satisfaction. Now, let's revisit what hands-on looks like for this stage. You're hands-on code, but you're also getting satisfaction by getting active in these conversations. It could be just reading tech blogs, going and signing up for a course on Udemy or plural sites. It could be potentially, as I said, coming to meetups and conferences. But you're kind of gathering all this knowledge, and you're figuring out a better way to get things done. Often at this point, when you do a git blame on your previous code, and you're like, did I write that shit code? Probably, probably we did. But you've kind of gone a couple of steps further, and at this point, you're hands-on code, but you care about the code and how it looks like. You care about how it will scale and grow. You care about the readability. Now, again, a couple of years further down the lane, you figured out how to do all this really well, and there's a system of things you care about. This is the system that you work on. But you started realizing this is not an isolated piece which is not connected to the rest of the world. Even though you care and own this small system of piece, there's a bigger picture. There's a context around it that influences what you do in this area that you own and control, right? So there's an area, an ecosystem of things that is influencing what you work on autonomously. So you start caring about those. You want to be involved in discussions on how this integration should look like. You want to care about whether Google is taking out a new policy about third-party cookies. You start caring about a lot of these things because it impacts the decision you're taking in the small box that you own. And you want to get involved in those discussions, the future of those discussions, the North Star. And at this point, you're still hands-on code. And I'm emphasizing that again and again because, as I said, I do not believe in ivory tower architects. You still hands-on code. You still love the code. You still get involved. You understand what good code looks like. But you started caring about the ecosystem of things. So the sense of satisfaction and happiness has started coming from a bit more than what it used to. You love getting things done, and you still get satisfaction of moving the Jira tickets out. But then if you're involved in an amazing discussion, that further increases your reason to come to work. And then additionally, if somebody is kind of pulling you in the corner and saying, can you help me how this whole system would look like if we have to integrate and build this new feature, and you're able to contribute to that, that's giving you even a bit more satisfaction. Now, again, a few more years down the line, you've understood this, you've increased your breadth, you're understanding beautiful architectures. Now, you want to work with capable team members. You want to have great discussions. And to do that, you have to enable others around you. You can't just lock yourself in a room and assume you'll get to work with great team members. And you can't assume you will get to do great things when you're not investing in the culture around you, right? So at this point, again, emphasizing, you still hands-on code. You're getting involved and understanding what good looks like. You are getting more involved in how the ecosystem of things look like, but you're also helping uplift the capability of your team. And you're probably conducting lunch and learns. You're probably conducting how can we learn this new skill? You're probably arranging, let's say if there's a new technology on the block, you're probably arranging external speakers to come and speak to your team and explain. And you're kind of investing in your team members and that capability uplift. So what good feels like and what satisfaction looks like in your job evolves. It doesn't stay on just picking a Jira task or a story and getting it done. It has evolved. And that's what growth and evolution in our career feels like. Now, with this understanding and answer to the question, I would actually really encourage you all, if possible, probably if you get time over the rest of the weekend or the coming week, take out a pen and a paper or a Miro board or whatever works for you, an iPad. Maybe look back at the last month you've had or the upcoming month and start doing a mind map of what gives you satisfaction. And see what your hands-on and satisfaction looks like. Why would you like to come next day to work and feel happy that you're getting to do the things you want to? So start writing those things, and you would realize where you are and what are the extra things that might give you even more satisfaction. Now that I've kind of put some groundwork and I've kind of put some data and facts in picture, I do want to talk about tool set. Because end of the day, what I wanted to achieve with this talk is I wanted to give you some tools that you can use when you're having conversation around growth with your line manager or your team or your mentor or coach, or when you're changing your jobs. What are these tools that can help you have effective conversations or plug you in the right spot when needed to grow? The first tool, which I called is experimenting and ever evolving. Back in 2011, more than a decade back, feels really bad to say a decade back. I was not on purpose telling the number of years of experience I have. But yeah, back in 2011, I had just been promoted to a senior consultant. I was in this project in ThoughtWorks UK, where I was pairing with the DevOps engineer in that particular sprint. He was showing me how, and we were using Puppet at that time. He was just showing me some of the CI/CD work he was doing and infrastructure work he was doing. And he was telling me he's going on these amazing holidays in Europe. So then he looks back to me and asks me, I'm gone for 3 weeks. Would you cover for me? And I look at him, and I give the most obvious answer. No. I don't want to cover for you, especially for a language and a set of practices that I have no knowledge about. We had a 101 right after that. And over the next 30 minutes and a cup of coffee, he convinced me to say yes. I walked out of that 101 extremely perplexed on why the hell did I say yes? I could have just easily enjoyed what I was doing. Why the hell did I say yes to this? But then, again, we had a couple of days of handover. In the next 3 weeks, I loved it. I absolutely enjoyed understanding the things that exist in that circle outside the things that I own, but still impact and shape how some of these things come together. And I actually went back to the team in ThoughtWorks and said, Ken, for the next project, you put me as a DevOps engineer. I would want to raise my hand for that. I was a DevOps engineer for 1.5 years around that time. Absolutely loved it, learned a lot. I know nobody uses Puppet, or maybe some people do, but I learned a lot of Puppet and Ansible at that time. So what this taught me was, it kind of taught me I need to say yes a little bit more than I say no. I need to choose change over constant. Now, I'm not saying go say yes to everything that comes your way. You need to understand the opportunity card, probably make some decision logs, and understand what it truly means for your career. But be open to saying yes a bit more, right? If it is something that would allow you to grow, maybe expand yourself more in breadth, sure. Try saying yes. Try experimenting a bit more. Try choosing that change. Sometimes when you go out of your comfort zone is where your real opportunities and growth lies. And let's go to the next one, which nicely kind of leads to there, because I was talking about breadth. Depth first, then breadth. Now, again, I'm going to refer to the talk we had for Keynote today, where we were talking about GitHub Copilot. I've lived over Stack Overflow, asking questions and getting some answers from there. GitHub Copilot, I've started to not hate it anymore, and I've started enjoying the productivity gains I'm getting out of it. But I do question that sometimes do these tools provide us instant gratification and take away the curiosity that's needed. It's great to go and find answers from somebody else, be it a tool, be it a person, but it's also really important to then understand why that answer is correct. When you get an answer on Stack Overflow, which is marked 2 years old, is that the latest answer to the problem you want to have, or you want to research a little bit more and understand what's new out there? Sometimes Stack Overflow would say, this is a tool that would get your work done. Install this plugin or package, and it would solve the problem for you. But maybe 2 years back, that was great. The language now might have it out of the box, or a newer package may have replaced it. So have you done that kind of research? And also to add to that, another thing to just think about is when you're doing all these research and not getting curious, are you losing that foundation that you really need to grow on top of? And then once you have that depth, go breadth. Understand, as I said, understand the things that influence your decisions and allow you to move forward. The next tool, mentoring. Who doesn't like to have a mentor or two? Somebody who's extremely invested in you. We've all kind of been told about mentoring and asked to kind of find mentors. So I'll not cover too much on that topic, but I'll kind of leave you with 3 points. A good mentor is always open to give you appreciation as well as developmental feedback. Point number 2, they would show up to their one-on-ones. If they are not showing up to their one-on-ones and regularly canceling that, not so good. You need to understand, is that the right mentor I am investing in, right? Maybe they might have a week or two bad, they might have 1 or 2 bad weeks, but that should not dictate how the whole year should look like. They should be turning up to your one-on-ones as much as you are turning up. And the 4th point is they should be generous when it comes to sharing opportunities and networks with you. So that's what, for me, mentoring feels like. But the reason I kept it short is I wanted to move to reverse mentoring. Now, with the X number of years of experience I have under my belt, which is definitely more than a decade, I've realized I can't read every book on the shelf. But I have an amazing team I work with. I have a lot of people who come to me for mentoring advice. And there are people who are joining, who are learning new tools on the blog. They are my extended capabilities. I can leverage the network that comes to me for mentoring as my reverse mentors. I can use them to understand what's going on, what's the latest tech, what should I invest my time in, and it helps me prioritize and pick up the right things to choose from. So that's reverse mentoring, and it's a really important thing when you think about growing your career. If you're feeling stale, if you're feeling, how do I stay relevant? I don't have the time. This is an extremely important tool. All right, on to the next one, building networks. Again, I'm going to skim this very quickly. I know I'm racing towards time. If somebody has not said this to you, I'm going to sound like the broken record and say, networks, networks, networks. It's not about exchanging business cards. It's actually investing in them, because they would lead you to opportunities you do not even know existed. This is the one I want to cover in detail, reverse interview. When you go out for an interview, you're not the only one being interviewed. You are interviewing the company you want to join. Do not lose that opportunity. When you go for an interview, go prepared to answer their questions, but go prepared with the set of questions you have. When I was in my uni, I had two jobs from the campus, and we knew that the years ahead are not great and people are being sacked, so I was very happy to have those two in my pocket. But I wasn't excited to join any of the two. So much so that I remember in one of the interviews, they asked me the question, can you give me the name of 6 subjects you've learned in the last 12 years? I was like, how is that relevant to the work I'll be doing? I reached out to a friend who was working at SlideShare, and I said, can you arrange me a job interview? And he said, sure. And when I gave that interview, I loved every single person I met. I had 4 rounds of interview. I loved every single question that was asked. I remember each of those questions even till date. It's probably 14, 15 years back, but I still remember each of those questions. And I can say with utter confidence that's the same experience I had with ThoughtWorks, JP Morgan, and Bunnings. There were 2 people who interviewed me at Bunnings. I was extremely lucky to work with them. One of them is still at Bunnings. And it tells me that I made the right choice because I met the person I'll be working with ahead of time, and I knew I want to work with this person. So when you're going in an interview, these are the things you should keep at the back of your mind, because you are also interviewing the company. You have the choice in your hand as well. And that brings me to the most controversial one, the redundancy. Now, often redundancy is looked at in negative terms, right? Again, going back to an example from my previous company, we were often told when you go on a client side to deliver a project, you do a really good job because you will be given difficult problems to solve. But once you're kind of almost nearing finish, you hand it over to the client and make yourself redundant so you can work on better problems. And for me, this is a really important takeaway, even for my personal life. If I stick to doing only one kind of monotonous thing, I'm not growing. Unless I make myself redundant by automating the thing I work on, by documenting the thing I work on, and by uplifting the people I work with to be able to do the same thing, I'm not investing in myself. So I need to make myself redundant to grow in the job that I do, because I need to be able to do better things in life. So it's a bit controversial. One might give you a bit of an eerie, but if you are the bottleneck, at some point the team would not start liking you. You're going on leave, and they have to wait for you to come back to get something done. They're probably not going to like you. So document it, automate it, tell it to people around you, uplift them. And that's the last one. So before I open for Q&A, and I don't know whether we'll have time for that, I do want to leave you with a thought. Growth does not necessarily equate to titles and promotions. If you follow growth, salary, titles, promotions, all of that follow along. But if you follow the consequences, it's not necessarily growth is part of it. So when you're making choices to navigate your career and what you want to come next, if you keep some of these key takeaways in your mind, you would be able to have relevant conversations. You would be able to have those kind of data-driven decisions and fact-driven decisions in front of you to make the right call. Thank you. I do have to ask, do we take questions, or how does this work? OK, can? Anyone, any questions? Seep.
I really like the concept of the reverse mentoring. Can you expand on that? Like, I've never done that. I've always mentored on the side.
Yeah. So I have part of my lovely team sitting here. And so Ash and Chris are amazing at Sitecore, and we use that as a product. I am not amazing at it. So I often go to them for advice and figure out what thing to do. They're always there on my side. I have Sonia and Azi. They work with squads that I don't necessarily get to code on a day-to-day, and they would immediately be able to help me so that I can make the right engineering decisions. And similarly, to just answer that question, I was at a client a couple of years back, and we were working on a .NET project. And I would not say that I'm probably the best .NET developer out there, but because of the people I was working with, and I do believe I have strong foundations, I was able to very quickly build on it. They were my GitHub Copilot to tell me, these are the quick books you can read, these are great blogs you can get started with. And it got me there up and running without having to do a lot of that legwork. Anyone else? We have one there.
You mentioned a mind map thing.
Yes.
Sorry. You mentioned making a mind map of things you enjoy. Can you give us any more detail on what that looks like or any other sort of devices like that that you use?
So I typically use Miro or a pen and paper because that comes really handy. But what I would recommend when I was saying I was making this recommendation, what I would do is if you're using a Miro board, it does have templates out of the box, or you can use sticky notes, or you can just use a paper and pen. Whatever, again, as I said, works best from you. You can put it on a pegboard in your workspace. Start by just saying, put your name in the center, and then every day you find pleasure in doing something at work. Let's say you were involved in an architectural discussion and you enjoyed it, write down that architectural discussion. You were pairing with one of your colleagues and you felt that the pairing session was extremely helpful to kind of get up to speed, write that down. You finished, you had an extremely productive sprint, you felt you got a lot of things done, you like getting things done, you write that down. You create that mind map, again, using whatever tool is available to you. Some companies do not have Miro, but again, pen and paper, a whiteboard, everything works perfectly fine. It just looks like tree with bubbles coming out from each other. I'm happy to kind of draw it for you after the session. Yep.
Hello. Oh, there we go. That worked. All right.
It's just magic, right? Hi, great presentation, really enjoyed it. And you mentioned about mentoring, how it enriched your experience. When do you think is a good time in your career to start mentoring?
I think typically you would get cues of that. If you see your team members have started coming to you asking advice, you can kind of say, let's put up a regular 101 and let's probably make sure we're working towards an agenda. I always encourage people to work their own agenda out before coming to the meeting because I want to be prepared for things I want to talk about, but I would like them to drive it. So for me, it's really important, like when one or two people have started reaching out to you in a more informal way, probably suggest let's put something maybe once a month, once 2 weeks, whatever works for you, and let's kind of make this a little bit more formal.
Well, would you wait? Would you wait for your title to change? Would you wait for your title to change to become a team leader, or or would you start regardless where you are? So it could be mid-level, but if somebody comes to you for advice, would you schedule those?
Don't wait for title changes, right? Again, as I said, at JP Morgan, one of the persons that was my mentor, his code title was Code Monkey. Don't wait for your title to change. If you feel your team members can rely on you and they're coming to you, go for it. And as I said, like title change is arbitrary. Some companies, and if you have a startup of your own, or if you run a consulting company, you can give yourself any title you like, right? So they're just titles. I believe are consequences of the actions you do. So if somebody is coming to you for mentoring, title change is a consequence because people are starting to look up to you. But them looking up to you, feeling that you're a credible leader, that is the cue, that's the investment.